Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Katrin Becker. In this podcast, we talk to business owners, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, corporate executives, you name it. We talk to everyone and anyone because all of us have a short story to share and something that we can learn from one another. Because on this podcast, we believe that there's more that brings us together than separates us. And there's something that we can learn and grow in every single moment. So on today's episode, I have Mark Herschberg, who has a similar story to me. He started out as an engineer at MIT in physics and computer science and electrical engineering, but now he's an author and a speaker and a teacher. So we are so glad to have him on here and to learn about what he has learned throughout his career and how it can help each and every one of us. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
And something that I experienced a couple months ago, my son, when he turned 11, we took him and two of his friends to the zoo. And it's about an hour drive from where we live. And so I'm in the front, letting them chat. And I am fascinated by listening to their conversation going back and forth because at that point in time, I hadn't really let my son play video games. And these other two boys did. And my son could interact and be part of the conversation as if he knew exactly what they were talking about. And I found it fascinating of how these kids are learning from each other at a peer-to-peer level. That is something that I don't feel like we truly utilize in our systems today. But I know that you do some work in that space. So I'd love to hear more about that.
I encourage organizations to implement peer learning. Here's the thing about these skills. I can teach you the periodic table in chemistry. I can stand at the board and say, let's start with hydrogen, then helium, and one by one go through them, and here are electron shells. There is no formula for leadership. There's no periodic table for communications. It's all very situational. It's more like learning sports. I can teach you the rules of a sport in 30 or 60 minutes, but it's going to take you years to master it. And the way you learn is by doing. It's by doing drills or playing scrimmage games or getting coaching or feedback or watching the tape. But in our offices, we don't have that opportunity. It's very hard to say, hey, everyone, I'm going to try leading a different way. And then half a day later, when you've completely screwed it up, you go, okay, time out, do over, count. Nope, you already have the lawsuits filed against you. Really Instead, we need to create these areas for us to scrimmage and practice. And here's the thing, there are experts, there's lots of leadership experts, but you don't always need us. You don't need us the whole time. So what you can do is create these peer learning groups. And I recommend you can do this in your company. If your company doesn't want to do this, go create a local meetup group, find people from other companies. If you're perhaps an entrepreneur by yourself, find other entrepreneurs and do it together. So come together as a group. I recommend groups about 6 to 8 people, but you can scale it up. And then get some content. Now, that could be a book. And yes, you can use my book, but you can use other books, business books, leadership books, communication books. Use podcasts. Use this one. Use the episodes you hear on this great podcast. Use articles. Use videos. And what you do is you read some of the pages or you listen to one of these episodes and then come together to discuss it. Because it's in that discussion, this is where you start to say, well, I think of leading this way. And she talked about this. And someone says, okay, yeah, but I think of it that way. Or I tried that and here's where it didn't work for me. And that's part of our scrimmage. It's learning from each other. It's looking at real world situations. This, by the way, is how business schools teach. It's also how we're teaching these skills at MIT in the program I mentioned. So it's in that discussion that you start learning. And by the way, if you do this, there's 4 great things that come out of it. First, you're upskilling your team. Everyone who goes through this, they develop better skills. Second, you're increasing engagement. So especially if you're not the manager, share this with your manager and say, you're increasing engagement. We know workers today don't just want a paycheck. They want support. They want training. They want companies who care. Third, you're fostering internal networks because these groups aren't just engineers over here and salespeople over there. You mix it up. So you're going to interact with different people and build those relationships. And finally, you're creating a common language. If the book you choose is good to great, Well, then when we've all read it, I can say to you, hedgehog model. And you say, oh, I know exactly what you mean. So all these come together. Notice there's no real cost. Maybe you bought some books, but again, use this podcast and you're getting it all for free. And you get all these 4 great advantages at absolutely no cost.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you would like to share?
I think we hit the big topics. That's about it. I'll just share where you can get all this free stuff.
Yes, tell the people all the places.
There are 2 websites to go to. First is for the book, thecareertoolkitbook.com. And on that website, yes, you can see where to buy the book, Amazon, other places. You can also read my blogs and other articles. I talk about AI, I talk about other topics. You can get in touch with me or follow me on social media. But then there's a number of free resources, all free. I don't even ask for your email. Please take it using good health. The first one on the resources page is how to create that peer learning program we talked about. There are questions if you're a candidate and you're interviewing. How do you ask questions about the company culture? How do you ask questions about management style? I have not only the questions, but even how to bring it up. I have other resources for how do you think about hiring someone if you're on the other side of the table. So lots of free resources, all of this at thecareertoolkitbook.com. And then we mentioned the free Brain Bump app. If you go to brainbumpapp.com, you can also search for Brain Bump in the stores. But if you go to brainbumpapp.com, you can follow links to the stores. There's a 90-second video showing how it works. There's a Q&A section if you're not sure how to use a feature. And remember that depending on when you hear this, the 2.0 version is coming out in the fall of 2023. So get the free Brain Bump app and use it to remember all the great things you learn from this podcast and all your other sources, so you always have it with you and you get better ROI on the time you spend learning.
Well, I just love how generous you are with your information and knowledge, and thank you for your time and being here. There was a lot of great things for the listeners to digest. I suggest listening to this a couple of times. Definitely download the Brain Bump app. And I love that, even just the play on words. You know, we're so used to saying brain dump, of getting everything out of our heads, but I love the double entendre of bringing it back in, that it's brain bump. We're bumping our brains up. So I love it.
The nudge for your noggin.
Oh, that's so good. All right, Mark. Well, thank you so much. I will have all of your contact information in the show notes for people. I hope they reach out to you. And for those listening, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe to this so that we can continue to bring you more amazing guests. If there's anything that you're curious about, any type of profession that you would like to see on there, please reach out to me. I would love to try to find those guests for you. Until next time, everyone.